Before some of you throw pitchforks at me, you should probably listen to what I'm about to say. One that involves another good character from Frozen who I generally like, including most of them that just had poor development the more you look into the details. Because when I thought back to making videos pertaining to the Duke of Weselton or Olaf and even Elsa, I also thought about Kristoff as a character more and more, including his purpose in the film to counteract Hans and be the real love interest of Anna from the first to every subsequent media that featured Frozen, especially that of Frozen 2, where we all know that his only real character's motivation was to propose to Anna rather than actively help in the overall plot for some reason, where you kind of see the point that his only real big service to Frozen as a franchise is serving as Anna's main love interest rather than having his own unique character overall. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, he is an enjoyable part of Frozen in the first film for who he is and what he played in the meantime, adding great moments in the story, but you never get anything meaningful for him afterwards or even before when the movie starts. Featured again as a big character with him as a kid alongside young Sven, knowing he was placed here but ended up there as the movie progressed. And that's why I wanted to talk about him today. Knowing another element that sadly got shafted for the most part in the story that could have worked if they made Frozen 2 a good movie in the first place, where this will be strictly speaking about the movies themselves in this regard, compared to the other shorts that are mainly done to either prop up the sisters a little bit more, or Olaf for an unreasonable amount of time. And this is an event that starts back at the very beginning of the film with Frozen Heart playing after the powerful Vulai or whatever you call that, introducing us to the business of selling ice that was very important. Like thinking back on this part now and what people recognize about Frozen, it really has become the most forgotten element of the movie itself. Not that people just don't remember it happening since Frozen still is a very big movie that is watched occasionally for lots of families, but the fact that nobody really even sings Frozen Heart or remember any of these characters except for these two younglings right here, where they are in fact the first main characters introduced in the story before Elsa and Anna, where the point of the story in the first place is to set up the background of the Icy Kingdom and Elsa with her powers. Like this is something you see for the most part of most Disney films, beginning with the setup of their main characters from their very childhood of some sort of background that sets up some expectation, where adding something like this actually does nothing overall for his character in that regard. I mean, yes, you get the picture of his background of Kristoff in a way, but that's something that's not really important to think of in the broader details, only done to introduce the song and set up the context of Frozen Heart and how the movie really aims for the heart in several different ways. But then, you have to ask yourself some important questions in the other feature of Hans later in the film and how Kristoff plays in that as they are adults at that very point. Like, what purpose does he truly have in this part with the other ice cutters in the scene, because we see him almost get lost and they kind of forget about him in this segment. Like, you see here, he's still behind him trying to catch up, but then in the next scene, you see him after the sequence with Elsa and Anna and their parents, it's just him and Sven wandering alone in the forest. Like, what happened to them in between? Where did the other guys go, and why isn't anyone questioning a lone kid wandering aimlessly around and going to wonder what the ice trail he sees is truly about before he sees the trolls appear? A part that just sets up more questions and answers, because in this part he just automatically gets adopted by the trolls.
Cuties, I'm gonna keep you.
What the fuck? You see, this is just horrible because it sets up a wrong precedent for characters who were originally designed as villains in Hans Christian Andersen's original novel, and how ancient Nord folklore actually tells us what they actually did. Where the stories generally say that they were known to kidnap children, which basically is exactly what she is doing right here, being raised with no questions asked, foregoing the entire beginning sequence with him as a character. Sure, this might seem like a cute moment in the beginning sequence, but it adds nothing except the question of Kristoff's prior relationship to his parents or the Icemen. It doesn't offer any insightful conversation other than that he knows the trolls later on in the story when Anna actually goes back to meet them for the twist of who his family was. We're thinking of that later. This shock would have worked better if it wasn't actually included at all and just featured him at the beginning with Sven before the song For the First Time in Forever actually played out. I mean, co-director Jennifer Lee did explain that he already was an orphan at the beginning of the film, which sort of makes sense to how he's raised differently and the fact of his connection with the Icemen going forth and so what, but it really doesn't explain much about his connection as a loner or the relationship between those ice harvesters whom he shares the same style of clothes as. Sure, he still is an ice harvester when he grows up, but I just don't get what we are supposed to derive from that is important or cute for the sake of it when he's just adopted like that, serving no greater context other than that point later on, and the fact that the trolls are supposed to help people with their powers evidently, because honestly in the entire film, the trolls are just as helpful as Elsa and Anna's own parents overall doing jack, making things much more worse than they need to be in the first place, manipulating people into thinking they do good when they cause every single bad problem to begin with. Which is kind of the other reason I wanted to talk about this video in the first place, alongside Kristoff's problem, where just like how they designed Elsa as one way for the story, which was bad, so were the trolls overall because of the original material involved. Like remember, they were villains and they were kind of like devils themselves, wanting to bring up a mirror to heaven and as a joke to God himself. Like, it's fine the way it was, but it just comes across as stupid and unnecessary moving forward alongside the other side characters, because they have powers to make people forget, and they kind of do that to us in that regard to the Iceman at the very beginning, making us actually accept the fact that she should take a reindeer and a human boy just like that without any rhyme or reason or any questions to be asked. It's like very inconsistent to a certain idea if you have the Icemen that are this one way and it informs Kristoff's character to still be an Iceman later on, but you never get that later on in the story, and you're just adding him here because it serves some sort of connection to the main characters in some shape or way. When we know later on, when Kristoff actually introduces the trolls, he didn't know Anna at all. He did see Anna and Elsa as a young age and knew that that was the actual royals of the time, but he never questioned that later on, like I saw this happen one time or another. Like it makes more sense that he's just there and twist to surprise that his family is a bunch of trolls secretly who raised them when nobody else would, but then again, these scenes just don't make any sense. I know it's a passage of time and Kristoff actually grew up, but he would have actually known that the kingdom of Arendelle was there because he was there at the very beginning too, and he should know about the princesses in some shape or form. He saw it. And it doesn't make sense to include him here unless there was a greater purpose to his character. But afterwards, I really just don't have a problem with his character again with his interactions with Anna and Olaf, because it did feel more natural to happen across such events, to the present day with intro their works just like that, and especially when he comes in all snowy to contrast to the warmth Hans brought into the film. Like it makes more sense to how that is built up for both leading men rather than whatever they wanted to put in at the very beginning when he clearly isn't the focus of the story until later other than a cute part. That just serves no purpose other than its own existence to connect to Arendelle and the trolls themselves. I mean, again, Hans was from another kingdom as an older age where you couldn't actually introduce him that very early on in the very beginning, as a child obviously, but thinking in terms of where the story is headed, including past and future Disney films, its focus at the very beginning is on its main subject matter rather than someone who's not its main subject matter to be shown here. Like at least in Frozen 2, they solved this problem by going back to the time when Elsa and Anna were kids rather than featuring him at all, just focusing on the family dynamic that is more important to the story and setting up the overall tone moving forward. Where the next big problem I have with Kristoff shows up again with the trolls during one of the most terrible songs ever played in a Disney film like Fixer Upper, where for some reason Disney has put songs in the worst possible moments when the main character or events are in danger, thinking in terms of others like A Guy Like You when Paris was burning, and here when Anna is actually going to freeze to death, literally. I mean, this isn't bad per se, where it does hold some truths to love and changing within the overall message of the film that works, but in terms of what Kristoff believes in not being engaged to someone you just met, it kind of ruins it, to be honest, making the trolls do the same thing in such a way by marrying them both right here and then, and at the end despite his pleas that she was already engaged to someone else and they need to help Anna. Like they're so busy fixated on trying to get Kristoff and this new girl together that it doesn't hit them until it actually hits Anna that she's in danger and she's going to freeze. It's more done to frame the subversion the movie has, like the obvious answer most movies would show, like, hey, Kristoff is the actual man Anna should be with rather than Hans because of his ruggedness and understanding of things beyond what Anna knows since she was sheltered for so long, before learning that love can come from within Elsa and Anna's relationship. The illusion of two choices that are normally present when something else can come into play, where it doesn't really feel well developed at that point, going to one extreme to the next. Like again, I don't have a major problem with this scene playing out the way it does, since we can have another nice shock revealing he was raised by the same trolls we saw at the very beginning if we removed him from that part, but it kind of lessens the impact he has as a character being framed as a love interest in the finale, which is fine. It's still a plus to have him like that since the film isn't bad in wanting that, and of course his character connecting with Anna, which which is a nice, charming relationship, but not actually a good one either. But this is just putting into context the films that have been released within 1 and 2, and where you actually go from there. There should be a greater purpose for Kristoff to realize other than being another half that gets a reward of being the love interest of our princess character, our main hero of the film. There's got to be something more for him to do other than that. Like, he's very helpful in this journey, and he has some truths that are different because of their connection. Like, they don't get along, they get along in a friendly terms relationship, but they don't grow into lovers the way you would normally expect, because the story is not supposed to focus on that. Because when you start to think about the sequel in this conversation, you start to see the bigger problems revolving around his very character since he becomes a main one as well. His role here was alright in the first film, but now we have to play into the fact that he is the love interest of Anna after Hans conveniently became the villain to remove him out of the equation instead of, you know, two guys who share a distinct connection but only one can actually come out. Where when you understand the documentary of Into the Unknown, then you start to realize his character's uselessness for the broader story, not really being able to use him at all because they couldn't really figure that out. Again, it did work in the first film because he did have a major use for Anna and Elsa getting back together, but not so much later on when they are now together and now going to find Atta Holland, just having him tag along for the adventure. The one where his only major character arc was proposing to Anna, and that was it. There wasn't any logical reason for him to be involved other than that point where you can easily write him out of the story and nothing would have changed within Frozen 2. And the justification for him being there was the fact that they wanted to create his own song. The first one was cut being Get This Right, but then realized in the story that they needed to have him have a purpose for him from beginning to end, now having Lost in the Woods near the middle of the journey, getting to the end. Where, if you remember after the song plays out, he no longer is involved for the story until the very end when the dam has to get destroyed, when Anna has to perform her task. Where it's not only the fact that Kristoff got written out for half the movie, this was of course alongside our other new characters within the Notodra and the Arendelle guards who had a purpose connecting to earlier events and the broader tissue of the story introduced by Agnar early on, but then just shut out in favor of Elsa finding the truth out and Anna being present to help. But again, compared to them, he just feels unnecessary and hollow other than the fact that he was an original character who is still, in fact, Anna's love interest and nothing more than that nowadays, where he literally is nothing more than a big fat joke, thinking not but of himself to propose to Anna as the only important thing to his life, rather than the important mission to save their own kingdom, solving a bigger problem he also knew about in key scenes but doing next to nothing to actually help, or the fact that his relationship with Anna is almost non-existent in this film, where evidently, as most people have pointed out, he actually has more chemistry with the other reindeer boy, Ryder. It just somehow drags him to a level of patheticness where he never needed to exist as a character at all in any of these films. I mean, yes, the first film, but not this one at all. And yes, I have seen videos explaining how he works in terms of his relationship with Anna, but I'm just purely looking at this from the film and franchise perspective, and I can't just find a way to agree with that final blueprint, with its purpose alongside these other side characters being elevated within the family, which is the center of these films, but also just removed, just like those smaller side ones, for the majority of it, keeping Olaf still on that journey instead. Once again, you still understand his role in the first in so many ways, and he just makes sense, but now you're starting to see him in a more negative way, questioning any point to him, where you never understood his existence in the very first scene of the first film, and you never understand his existence in the entirety of the second movie. And that's just frankly a problem with Frozen 2, having a story that wasn't meant to be included in a normal 90-minute animated film, discussing something that has the same issues with Olaf that also had a purpose but now drummed down into nothing but a comic relief. Ideas that can work on paper, but only if that focus is fleshed out properly over the course of time, seeming like Frozen 2 was just way too ambitious for them, and why they need to have Frozen 3 and 4 in the works to solve such an issue, if that can work and where they can take the story since they already messed that up to begin with. Where going forward sets up more questions about where does the character land on, where does he stand, what does he do in his role as consort and helping out, considering that never gave him time to understand that, one that could have worked if that was resolved quickly so he could move forward with the rest of them having some sort of relevance to the story, but again just chose not to in order to focus on the more important factors, which of course was Elsa in this film, and everyone else just chasing after her in some way rather than actually having an importance at all. But just more specifically in this video, how this man remains to be one of the worst of the bunch in terms of characters' relationships additions to a story. But who am I to judge? This is basically a short observation based upon the surface of what I can see. Maybe others can see more, but it's just harder to justify it when other films have much more to offer where the characters like himself and should change for the better of the future. One where he could be a great character as on his own moving forward, and I hope that comes true someday. I'm done now. Get out.